My command center. I'm orbiting Earth, and I'm examining the nearby space-time, and I'm also beaming down in your social media live. So if you have any comments and suggestions, you can actually reach out to me using the chat function in the social media. Today we want to discuss about the Mangalyaan mission, and for the trivia sakes, you must be knowing that the Mangalyaan was the India's attempt to go to Mars, planet Mars, and India is the only country which succeeded in their first attempt. And Mangalyaan was an orbiter mission, and it's rather difficult, and it has a lot of parameters to be able to go to Mars, because as a space agency you have to consider lot many things before you fire your mission. So Mangalyaan was actually a scientific demonstration mission, and it has now come to an end after 8 years of operation. So today we will examine what has Mangalyaan achieved, what were the circumstances, what are the circumstances of Mangalyaan, and why it is now shutting down. The official record of ISRO says that now the project is decommissioned. So let us get on to this journey of understanding Mangalyaan in detail. Well, Mangalyaan is, as I said, was a demonstration probe, and it was not supposed to be operational for more than 6 months, because it was only a demonstration piece, and ISRO, which is the India Space Agency, wanted to first try out whether they can send a spacecraft to the Mars, and can they get into the orbit. There are a lot of parameters with regard to Mars, and you need to coordinate with the motion of Earth as well as motion of planet Mars, and the nearest point coincide every 2 years. So first of all, you need to plan your firing of your space launch vehicle precisely, so that your spacecraft, once it is launched, it has that trajectory to reach Mars in 6 to 7 months. Second thing is, when the satellite is in the orbit of Mars, it has to carry out certain missions. So there is a list, there's a long list of this scientific experiment which Mangalyaan was supposed to do. And since this was only experimental piece, this was a very, very small spacecraft, which was only 15 kgs. The weight of the entire Mangalyaan was only 15 kgs. So you can imagine that it is very lightweight, but it had many other sensors, more advanced sensors, but very lightweight. Since India wanted to use this as an experiment only. So this is about the Mangalyaan, and because of Mangalyaan, we now understand the source of methane. So Mangalyaan was able to identify the source of methane that we see on the planet Mars. Now, methane is usually associated with living things. When living things, basically, this is one of the gases. If there is life on a planet, the methane is released by the living things, living organisms. So moment we detect methane in the atmosphere, we assume that there is life on this planet. So methane was detected even previously, but we did not know how the methane was being produced, because methane usually, as I said, comes from the living things. So there may be microorganisms, there could be small living insects living on the Mars somewhere, which may be responsible for methane. And that was an assumption, but Mangalyaan was able to identify the process of methane generation on the surface of Mars, because most of the methane is happening because of the space radiation, which is hitting the water molecules deep down, which is basically in the permafrost area, and because of the very intrinsic, very complex reaction, you get the methane as per the Mangalyaan. Now this particular finding has been corroborated also by other probe, but in 2013, when Mangalyaan reached, or 2014, when Mangalyaan reached the planet Mars, we did not understand this process. Now we understand this very well because of the corroboration made by other countries' probe also. So this was one of the biggest finding and contribution of Mangalyaan. So I think we must give credit where it is due, since this was only a experimental spacecraft. I think finding the source of methane has been incredible. This is something that we must give credit to Mangalyaan. Second thing is, why the life of Mangalyaan was supposed to be only 6 months, but it lasted for almost 8 years. It was operational in the orbit, and it was a very small spacecraft, but it was mostly driven by the battery system. And the way the spacecraft were designed is that it had the battery for 2 hours. And when it comes in front of the sun, then the batteries which which are basically charged using the solar panels will be charged. So there was a combination of how much battery the spacecraft will use, how much recharge is required. So the battery backup, as we talk in today's lingo, when we talk about mobile phones, so this was a battery backup of 2 hours in absence of sunlight. So I have a question from Heidi Vargas, and she's asking, is it Jupiter or Mars? So Heidi, actually I'm talking about the Indian mission, which is known as Mangalyaan, which is now declared decommissioned. So we are discussing about Mangalyaan, which is a word in Sanskrit, and it was the first Mars mission of India. So we're discussing about that. If you have any question, you can ask me live right now. All right, so this particular probe had a battery backup of 2 hours, and when it goes on the other side of the Mars, then there will be no sun, and because of non-availability of the sun to charge the solar panels, the battery will actually start draining quickly. So the spacecraft had to maneuver that it remains out of the shadow on the other side, not more than 2 hours, because if it remains in the shadow for more than 2 hours, then the battery will completely drain, and then it will render the spacecraft completely useless. So that was the idea. And to do these maneuvers, the spacecraft had a certain fuel which was used, and the very complex maneuvers used to be done to remain out of the shadows of the Mars, so that they can quickly come out from the other side, because anyway the spacecraft is in orbit, and it can come out of the orbit towards the sun quickly. And that was a maneuvering done by the spacecraft. Unfortunately, as I said, that this was planned only for 6 months, but it lasted for 8 years, and that's because of the lot of conservation of fuel, etc. Very complex mathematics the scientists use in order to extend the life of the spacecraft. However, it ran out of all the fuel, and during the last orbit of Mangalyaan, since it did not had any fuel left, it could not perform the maneuvers which were required to for the spacecraft to stay out of the shadow. That means it could not recharge its batteries. And this last journey of the spacecraft lasted for 7 hours in the shadow, basically eclipse. And as I said, that the battery backup was only for 2 hours. So by the time the spacecraft came out of the shadow, it was too late. The battery had run out, and during the first week of October, the NASA announced that this spacecraft is now decommissioned. It is not going to be, because it's now dead. Batteries are completely drained, no fuel left. So finally, Mangalyaan journey has come to an end. It is not active anymore. All right. So I think this is quite incredible that a scientific experiment which weighs only 15 kgs and achieved the success in the first attempt itself, ISRO has to be given credit for planning this mission. And we also have some scientific finding. It was able to achieve certain things which we now know very well about the methane source, etc. So I think this is something that we have on today's live stream. If you have any questions about this, please you can shoot out these questions to me, or later on also you can actually share your questions. I can reply. And I can see one question here which is from Heidi again, and she's asking, was this recent? So yes, of course, this is this spacecraft reached the orbit in 2014 and lasted for 8 years. The plan was only for 6 months, but then the life was extended because of the complex maneuvers. And in the first week of October, it went dead because the battery ran out. So Heidi, this is answer to your question. And so this is incredible, in my opinion, that ISRO was able to plan a mission to Mars and became successful in their first mission itself. And India became the only country to have a successful mission to Mars in their first attempt. So friends, this is what I wanted to bring to you in my live stream today, which is regarding the science. I will catch you again tomorrow with more intriguing subject, more intuitive. Until then, I like to say goodbye for today, only to catch you again tomorrow. Bye bye for today.